Hello, and welcome to the official Wrestling News 365 YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us here today. This is your AEW Dynamite review for the November 27, 2019 edition of AEW Dynamite. This week, like every professional wrestling show it seems, AEW Dynamite emanated from Chicago, Illinois, in the Sears Center Arena for yet another live episode on TNT. So let's get right into it. So from the outset, I would just, as I mentioned there, almost every professional wrestling show in the last week seems to have emanated from Chicago. Chicago has had 5 days of wrestling shows in 6 days. 5 out of the last 6 days have been wrestling shows there. So we've seen, and there's been reports of and images have gone around on social media that the attendance wasn't great at last night's episode of Dynamite, but that was the same with Raw. Let's be brutal about it. We saw that the sections were bare and empty at both shows, but I mean, realistically, what do you expect? To have 5 shows in 6 days is a big ask and a huge expense for the Chicago market, especially around Thanksgiving time in the States, and the holidays are coming up. Money's tight. Not everyone, even the most hardcore of hardcore fans, well, maybe some of the hardcore of hardcore fans, but nevertheless, a lot of people aren't going to attend all 5 shows. So I didn't read too much into the low post-Survivor Series attendances in Chicago. For me, that's just a case of oversaturating the market, exhausting the market. I think anywhere in the world, even when they have these like European tours in the UK over here, they don't hit the same city every night. They're all over the country. So it's not a case of anyone's that the people are not interested in going to the shows, or AEW Dynamite can't draw, or Raws can't draw anymore. I mean, there might be a factor into it, maybe just attendances across pro wrestling's down overall, but I don't read too much into it. You can't have 5 shows in 6 days and expect to be having sellout arenas all the time. That would be Attitude Era style attendance records. But let's get on to the show. It starts with Chris Jericho's Thanksgiving Thank You celebration. We have Soul Train Jones. Yes, Virgil is back on AEW Dynamite. His second appearance on the show after being part of Chris Jericho's VT before Full Gear a few weeks ago. Soul Train is in the ring for Jericho's celebration. He calls this the greatest night in television history and says that Soul Train Jones is your MC. The crowd was red hot for this and red hot for Soul Train Jones. Virgil sort of, because of all the social media of, the Virgil lines at all the cons and all this sort of stuff, and Virgil asking for money and that, he's sort of become this cult figure now, hasn't he? Anyway, Soul Train Jones introduces Chris Jericho, reading off some paper. I mean, he stumbled completely over his words several times. I thought his teeth were going to come out at one point. He was stumbling that bad over the words, but it doesn't matter. It was still entertaining as hell, and I think that's the point, isn't it? It was meant to be funny. Out comes Chris Jericho, who is played to the ring by a marching band. There's inflatable dinosaurs, ice creams, inflatable cow. Crowd chants, "Thank you, Jericho," to which Jericho responds with, "Sit down and shut up," which was tremendous. There's presents in the ring. There's also enough... I like this. I didn't notice it straight away, but there was an inflatable clown on the outside. Now, it wasn't just any old inflatable clown. It was an inflatable clown doing a handstand. Where on earth AEW found these props from, I would love to know, but I thought it's absolutely tremendous. Chris Jericho then pulls an Oprah move, tells the crowd to look under their chairs, and they'll find a coupon for 50 cents off the new Jericho t-shirt. I mean, and it's just the little things like that, isn't it? And there was actually coupons. They shot to a guy in the crowd who had a little coupon in his hand, which is tremendous. Chris Jericho then announced the launch of the official Little Bit of the Bubbly, a champagne. It's available at littlebitofthebubbly.com. I'll put a link below. I'm not afraid of doing a plug. Now, I will be honest, my notes do get a little bit poorer for the next sort of 10-15 minutes after this, because as soon as they announced it, I thought, wow, absolutely, I've got to get my hands on that. Who's not going to want a little bit of the bubbly champagne coming into the holiday season? How about, ringing in the new year with a little bit of the bubbly? Can you think of anything much better? I can't. Only to find out they don't ship it abroad. Oh. So I waited 15 minutes trying to get on the website, even tried to become a member of the website. Can't do it. So, my challenge to all of you, my challenge to AEW, my challenge to Chris Jericho, Tony Khan, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, whoever. Can we get a little bit of the bubbly over here in the UK before the new year? so we can celebrate it in style. I'm throwing out that challenge to you. Anyway, moving on. Chris Jericho brings out his best friends in the world, the Inner Circle. Crowd heavily boos Sammy Guevara, who says thank you to Chris Jericho, of course. Guevara then unveils his gift, which is a cardboard cutout of Sammy and Chris Jericho hugging, which they then recreate in the ring for a nice touch. Santana and Ortiz, they're next. They're revealing their gifts to Chris Jericho. They reveal a Boricua gift basket. There's some flip-flops in there. There is a bottle that's wrapped in the brown bag. They say, I know you like a little bit of the bubbly, but this is a little bit of the 40, which gets a huge pop. Then they give a Puerto Rican bandana to Chris Jericho, officially knighting him as an official Boricua, which gets a nice pop. Jericho then asks where Jake Hager is. We then cut to a shot of Jake Hager. I say bringing out a goat. I'll go to that in a second. Jake Hager brings out a goat. He says his name was Chris Jericho, which was, again, absolutely tremendous. This goat did not want to be on the show at all. The goat looked absolutely terrified. It didn't come out at all whatsoever. I mean, there was a handler with it, and the goat just did not want to know at all. I felt quite bad for it. And I'm surprised that they went with the animals again. There was a bit of, I wouldn't say controversy, but it was a point that was made after All Out, back when they had their previous show, ironically enough, here in Chicago, whereby for Cody Rhodes' entrance, he brought out his dog Pharaoh, or Pharaoh, however you want to say it, and the dog was quite spooked by the pyro that went off before Cody's entrance. And in the end, even with Brandy there and Cody there, and DDP being there, the dog was still spooked, and it took, in the end, actually MJF to sort of calm him down in the end. And they also used a horse, Hangman Adam Page coming out on a horse on that show. Anyway, the point is, after the show, when they have those sort of AEW post-show media scrums, Tony Khan was asked about this. He said, is the dog okay? What's Cody Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes' opinions on it? And sort of tried to almost take Tony Khan to task for the use of animals on their show. And Tony Khan went, I was really unhappy about Pharaoh being spooked. He's a great dog. Brandy wasn't happy with it. We're not going to use any animals going forward. So pretty big U-turn on that point already. It seems that the no animal policy has already been broken within the space of 2 months, 3 months by Tony Khan. I'm not one of those people that's going to be a bit like, they shouldn't be used, blah, blah, blah. As long as they're taken care of properly and their rights are respected properly, then I don't have a problem with it. But when you do see him as uncomfortable and terrified of a crowd like this goat was, it does sort of take you out the moment slightly. But nevertheless, the gag was brilliant. Chris Jericho, that's got to be on a t-shirt, surely. Do you remember that terrible Daniel Bryan t-shirt they had? And it was around the time they were calling him Goatface and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, there was like a cartoon goat, that shirt that Daniel Bryan had, and it was the most horrible shirt you have ever seen in your life. Wouldn't it be funny if Chris Jericho replicates a similar style of shirt with Chris Jericho underneath, and it sounds like gangbusters? The WWE would lose their lid. Anyway, back to the celebration. There's a box in the ring, which is nicely wrapped up with some nice wrapping paper. On the actual wrapping paper was faces of Chris Jericho. I wonder if you can get that in time for the holidays. Chris Jericho asks, what's in the box? What's in the box? Because as we know, as Jim Cornette has said many times, no, not that, he said that anyone in the box gets over. And that was no different tonight, because we find out inside the box is Chris Jericho's father. Yes, New York Rangers great Ted Irvin. He said it's great to be back in New York City, which gets loudly booed. I thought Irvin was great here. He wasn't exactly loud on the microphone, but I thought he did tremendous. He said there's loud "Let's Go Blackhawks" chants. Ted Irvin was actually wearing a New York Rangers jersey at the time. He says, forget about the Blackhawks. He beat the Blackhawks all the time. And says the Blackhawks always have and always will be wimps. Yes, Ted Irvin getting the most heat on this show. He then has a gift for every member of the Inner Circle, which is customized, personalized New York Rangers jerseys, to which the crowd obviously once again boos. Chris Jericho then says he has a statement to read from AEW and the TNT brass, thanking Chris Jericho for all he's done for TNT and AEW, but he says he doesn't want to read it himself. So he invites Justin Roberts in the ring to read it. He asks his name, where he's from. Of course, he's from Chicago. Everyone knows Justin Roberts is from Chicago. He's been announcing for years, and obviously when he started, he was announcing shows with CM Punk on back in the day. So Chris Jericho says he wants Justin Roberts to read his official thank you. He says the statement essentially says, "Thank you to Chris Jericho, that TNT and AEW are proud that Chris Jericho is le champion as well as their champion." Chris Jericho isn't happy though. He says he doesn't like Justin Roberts' tone and slaps Justin Roberts and attacks him along with the Inner Circle. Now, am I the only one here that thinks they really missed a trick? Anyone that's ever going to attack Justin Roberts has to go for the necktie and choke him. Daniel Bryan got fired over it. It's infamous. When Nexus debuted in 2010, they destroyed ringside. They attacked the announcers. They attacked the ring announcers. Daniel Bryan attacked Justin Roberts and choked the hell out of him. And then Daniel Bryan got fired because of the incident. Any other attack going forward on Justin Roberts, surely, you have to choke him with a necktie. I mean, that's just a given, isn't it? No? Okay. So he slaps Justin Roberts, attacks him with the Inner Circle. Then suddenly the marching band attack the Inner Circle, but it's revealed that the marching band are, of course, aren't just any marching band, they're SCU. With Scorpio Sky, of course, facing Chris Jericho for the AEW World Championship in the main event. SCU, though, they don't just attack the Inner Circle. Inner Circle back off and Jericho retreats, leaving Soul Train Jones in the ring, who actually gets attacked by SCU. Poor Soul Train, poor Virgil. But I thought this was absolutely tremendous. I thought it was a really fun segment and a great opening to the show. The crowd loved it and was red hot for it. I saw some people on social media saying, they were just trying to do another Festival of Friendship and it wasn't as good. I mean, damn right they were trying to do another Festival of Friendship. Chris Jericho knows how great that segment was. I mean, let's be honest. Everyone with any kind of these segments, they're trying to do This Is Your Life. I mean, that's the gold standard, isn't it, with these kind of segments? You know, they're trying to do This Is Your Life like Mankind and The Rock did. But instead of just redoing the segment again, like WWE has a million times and failed a million times, do I need to bring up Bayley This Is Your Life from a couple of years ago? AEW, when I say they, have updated it, and Jericho has, of course, put his own spin on it. But I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It was entertaining, it was funny, it was different, and it was must-see. Now, some of the wrestling purists will say, how can they, and I mean the Inner Circle by they, be heels here? They're cracking jokes, getting great responses from the crowd. Well, you had Chris Jericho telling the crowd to shut up and Chicago sucks. They had a New York Ranger shit all over the Blackhawks for 5 minutes. Then, for no apparent reason, they just attacked the poor, helpless ring announcer, who just so happens to be from Chicago. Before they attacked Justin Roberts, they made sure Justin got the hometown pop, saying he's from Chicago. He went to high school a few blocks away, and then Jericho beats the shit out of him just because he doesn't like his tone. That's a heel right there, brother. So I thought this was excellent. I mean, we say it every week, don't we? But Chris Jericho is the hottest thing in AEW right now, and possibly professional wrestling at the ripe old age of 49 years old. His segments consistently every week steal the show. I know a lot of people that, tune in purely because they want to see what Chris Jericho is going to do and say, because he could do or say absolutely anything. And why is that the case? Because I don't even think Chris Jericho knows what he's going to say or do until he gets into the ring himself. So, excellent stuff here. My one criticism, if I had to make one, would be the ending of the segment. Now, I understand the need for SCU to come out, save Justin Roberts, help tighten the main event, get the babyface pop, get the crowd on their side. But did they really need to be part of the marching band? Couldn't they have just come out to make the save? It's not a case of all three blending in and attacking Jericho and the Inner Circle from behind in the ring. We've seen CM Punk did it as part of the mariachi band. He looked like he's part of the mariachi band in a segment with Chavo Guerrero, turns around, hits him with guitar, removes the fake mustache and the sombrero, and it's CM Punk. No one knew. We've seen Edge, Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels and more pretend to be cameramen. But there wasn't any payoff here to SCU dressing up as the marching band. I mean, if we're led to believe they were in disguise the whole time, which I don't think they were, I think there was probably a switcheroo at some point, then if they were as part of the marching band the whole time, they were just playing Chris Jericho to the ring for no reason. So, yeah, I didn't understand that one, but didn't mar what was an absolutely tremendous segment and a tremendous opener to the show. Next, we have the announcers run down the card for this show, Jim Ross and Excalibur. No Tony Schiavone tonight. He was on assignment with his Georgia Bulldogs. But for the first match, we were joined by Marco Solis Martinez with JR and Excalibur from the All Elite Fleet. We'll get on to him in a second. Opening match is a tag team match, Best Friends versus the Lucha Brothers. We have the Best Friends come out, but they're attacked from behind by the Lucha Brothers. But Orange Cassidy, dressed up as a turkey, of course you've got to get that Thanksgiving reference in, jumps from the top rope onto all of the competitors. And apparently this is our matchup. It wasn't really announced, but this is what we're having. This Marco Martinez guy, I'm assuming he's never done commentary before in his life. I mean, I'm not saying if I went out there I'd be any good. Lord knows the pressure and how difficult it is. But he was, not good. Not good. No one could barely hear him. To be honest, his tone of voice just sounded like he didn't want to be there at all. It sounded like this was the last thing he wanted to be doing. It was almost like he was walking around backstage enjoying himself or having a beer, and then someone's going, "Oh, can you go on commentary for 5 minutes?" Oh, really? I mean, that's what it felt like. That's what his tone of voice sounded like anyway. Anyway, back to the match. We have a drop kick by Pentagon Jr., standing sliced bread number 2 by Chuck Taylor. Orange Cassidy distracts Pentagon Jr., and Trent Beretta, or Trent, as he's just called in AEW, hits the crunchy and gets the victory, which then leads to Marco Solis Martinez getting off commentary. Thank God. Just sounded absolutely terrified. This was a fine match. It wasn't super long, as obviously as you can tell there, but fine enough. I'm a fan of Trent, and I understand the need to elevate other tag teams in the tag team division. But in my opinion, the Lucha Brothers shouldn't be doing jobs to the Best Friends. Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, they're just too good to be doing jobs to that team. Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, I think, could easily be and potentially be future world champions in AEW in singles competition. So if they're going to get losses on their record, especially when losses and wins matter so much in AEW, with them tracking every single record, they shouldn't have any losses on their record in singles matches or tag team matches to the Best Friends. Likewise, and this is a bit of a side note here, it just would appear that the feud between Pentagon and Daniels is just over now. Of course, we had Daniels dress up twice as Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix to attack Pentagon Jr. in the last few weeks. First at Full Gear, when Daniels returned, dressed up as Pentagon Jr. And then last week, during the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, we had Daniels dress up as Rey Fenix and attack Pentagon and lead to his elimination. So there doesn't seem to be any story conclusion here or any retribution for Pentagon at all. That on top of Pentagon Jr. losing twice in 2 weeks, I wonder who he's pissed off. Next, we have some women's division action. We have Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander versus Bea Priestley and Emi Sakura. Statlander hits a moonsault off the apron to Priestley, followed by a missile drop kick to Emi Sakura. Hikaru Shida then attempts to use a steel chair as a launch pad, as she's done several times, but Emi Sakura sits in the chair, but only to have Hikaru Shida to kick her out of the chair. Easy for me to say. Hikaru Shida suplexes Emi Sakura into Bea Priestley, who was set up in the turnbuckle in between the ropes. Her feet just smashed Bea Priestley in the face. Looked absolutely brutal. We then get the hot tag to Chris Statlander. I thought Chris Statlander looked absolutely great. Fantastic moves. She used a version of an Oklahoma roll onto Emi Sakura, which was a nice move. Obviously, got a huge reaction out of the Oklahoma native Jim Ross, going crazy on commentary for this one. Emi Sakura then hits a backbreaker on Chris Statlander, but Hikaru Shida breaks it up. We then get a Falcon Arrow by Hikaru Shida to Priestley and a scissor kick by Statlander to Emi Sakura. But the ref, it was only a 2 count, and there was another debatable count here by the ref, I think. So that makes 2 in 2 weeks for Dynamite, and 3, I think, overall, which have been a bit dodgy. Got to tighten up on those counts, refs. Come on. Or got to tighten up on kicking out at 2, the wrestlers. God. Michinoku driver to Emi Sakura, but it's broken up by Bea Priestley. Emi Sakura then uses a cheap shot with the microphone. Obviously, she dresses up like Freddie Mercury of Queen fame, comes out of the microphone stand. She uses that as a cheap shot onto Statlander and then rolls up Statlander for the victory. This became a cluster very, very quickly, I thought. The last few minutes were just clunky and overdone. As I mentioned, the ref looked like he might have pulled the count there again. This was followed up by a near fall after the Michinoku driver, whereby the announcers were almost like, oh, it was broken up again. You could even tell in their voices they were a bit like, oh, we're still going, this is too long, too many near falls. So the match itself wasn't bad. I mean, the crowd was into it, I thought. Or Northern Woman worked hard and they had some good spots. But the finish just really let it down for me. It was overdone, overcomplicated, too many false finishes in which led to a wet fart of a finish for me. The women's division is really a point of contention in AEW for me because it's probably the only part of AEW's product which I think really lets AEW down. Now, people are going to be like, oh, we're not going to compare AEW to NXT and WWE, but this is professional wrestling. Everyone compares each other to each other. But if you do compare AEW to NXT and WWE, this is where NXT beats AEW hands down. I mean, just look at Saturday. We had a female War Games match in NXT. A lot of talk recently has been about the likes of Tessa Blanchard and Impact Wrestling. She's challenging for the Impact World Heavyweight Championship, defeating men. If I was AEW, I would go out of my way to sign Tessa Blanchard. Tully works for the company. Use him for some influence. Do whatever you can. Do whatever you have to do. Because she is a star and a worker that you can actually build this lagging women's division around. We then have a promo by Jon Moxley. He says he continues to move forward in AEW, blaze a trail. He even calls himself Napalm Death. He wonders if there's anyone out there that wants him, if there's anyone that's crazy and that has a death wish, if there's anyone that wants to be a hero or get hurt trying. This was an excellent, excellent Jon Moxley promo. I'll save my thoughts for later on in the video about Jon Moxley and AEW, but as I mentioned last week, he's just behind Chris Jericho and being the hottest act in the company right now. He has been truly liberated by the creative shackles that is the WWE. Just another great promo, and for a fact this promo took as long to shoot as we saw. In WWE, this would have been scripted, taken 40 minutes for what was like a 30-second promo. There's just no need, is there? So this was tremendous. We next have Cody Rhodes back in action on AEW Dynamite. Cody still has the scar over his eye and his ribs taped up. He goes up against Matt Nix, making his debut in All Elite Wrestling. Excalibur mentioned that Cody only just got medically cleared by the AEW medical staff. The announcers then discuss if Cody should or shouldn't still be ranked as the third contender in the men's heavyweight division. Cody threw his weight belt into the crowd, and I haven't gone back to double check it again, but I'm like 90% sure it just smacked someone in the face. I mean, those weight belts are heavy. Like, they're not, this isn't your t-shirt you're throwing into the crowd. They've got buckles on them, metal spikes, metal pins. Man, this was a risky move. I mean, you might as well have thrown a Singapore cane into the crowd. Probably would have hurt less. Anyway, not much action here. Cody locks in the figure 4 leg lock, and Matt Nix taps out, and that's it. Post-match, Cody grabs a microphone, calls out MJF, and then suddenly, a guy appears in a mask. He rips it off, and Excalibur claims it's Blade, or the Blade, or whatever you want to call him. Then, coming out of the ring, like The Undertaker used to do and Kane has done himself, it's apparently the Butcher. They attack Cody Rhodes, and then out of the ring comes the Bunny. Yeah, the Bunny, who is Ali from Impact Wrestling. So they're setting up that you have Blade, the Butcher, and the Bunny. That name. I mean, I don't want to shit on the gimmick. If I start any sentence by saying I don't want to shit on the gimmick, it's probably going to mean I'm just about to shit all over it. I'm willing to give it a chance, but that name is already making me shake my head. Blade, the Butcher, and the Bunny. I said on Twitter that it sounded like an X-rated version of the Chronicles of Narnia. We'll see where they want to go with that, but why did they attack Cody? I mean, what problem did they have with him? AEW already has a stacked tag team division. I'm complaining about the Lucha Brothers putting over Best Friends. I'd probably lose my mind if the Lucha Brothers had to put over Blade the Butcher with the bunny at ringside. People used to criticize WWE for Adam Rose having the bunny actually competing in matches. Now, this was a guy in an actual bunny costume. Ali just kind of has a bunny mask on, but I mean, the similarities are there with that one. It'll be a tough one for this team, I think, to stand out in that division, because their gimmick sounds like the beginning of the fourth Hangover film. I mean, maybe I'm not as hyped because I'm not familiar with them. I've never seen them work, or I've never seen them compete on the indies or anything like that. But I mean, AEW, they could have at least done some vignettes. Not necessarily didn't have to be on Dynamite. You know, it would have been better if they're going to be on Dynamite, but that's quite prime real estate, and they're, short for time on that one. But they've got all their social media channels. Why not have some vignettes on AEW Dark on YouTube, or on the Being the Elite, or the Road to the Sears Center, or something. Just something to familiarize the audience, let them know that they're coming. This isn't a case of well-known indie stars that as soon as they show up, people are going to know who they are. This isn't a case of Marty Scurll or PCO arriving in AEW and everyone knows who they are, so the crowd pops. The crowd didn't pop. The crowd was like, who are you? And, AEW's fan base, especially in Chicago, is a very intelligent and hardcore wrestling base. And even they were a bit like, I don't know who these people are. So they could have done with some vignettes here just for something. And for them just to appear and attack one of your top baby faces and be like, oh yeah, that's the Butcher, the Butcher. And JR's reaction to this was all of our reaction. He was like, who are these guys? What's their story? And I know people are going to counter that by saying, well, that's the point. You're asking questions. Who are these guys and what are their story? But that works when they attack someone that isn't as big and established as Cody Rhodes. I get they're trying to make new stars here. I get they're trying to make their own stars here. But I don't think this was needed. This reminded me of when the Dark Order debuted in AEW, and just the crowd was like, who and why? And I don't get it. I don't understand. And when the crowd doesn't understand and doesn't know, they tend to shit on things. And it leads to some resentment to the talent, because for the longest time, the Dark Order, I was one of them. Every time they came out, this is bullshit, they're boring. It's only until the last 2 weeks of these Dark Order vignettes, which we'll touch on in a second, that I've only been like, okay, now I like this character, I like this gimmick, because there's a story behind it and I understand it. When someone just shows up and they go, oh, by the way, that's the Butcher, that's Blade, and that's the Bunny, you just go, what? What? I understand suspension of disbelief, but there's two guys in black with a woman in a bunny mask. I mean, it sounds like a bad bondage film. Next, we had Kenny Omega versus Pac. Kenny Omega got a great reception here. Pac, of course, was the number 1 ranked wrestler. Number 5th ranked wrestler was Kenny Omega. Pac, obviously, I don't think will be the number 1 ranked wrestler for much longer after this match. But Kenny Omega goes for the Katara Crusher, but Pac lands on his feet, similar to what he did at All Out. This, of course, was a rematch from All Out in this very arena. But Pac landed on his feet from it, and just scary athleticism. Pac's athleticism is, out of this world. But Kenny immediately hits a Snapdragon suplex, followed by a buckle bomb and a spine buster for a 2 count. A really hot start in this one. From the get-go, they were flying. Omega hits a beautiful dive of the top rope onto Pac. But Omega then starts to sound that he might have hurt himself on the dive, to which Pac capitalizes, drop-kicking Omega off the apron into the barricade. We then see Omega hit another Snapdragon suplex, though. Pac hits the Orihora moonsault from the top rope to the outside onto Kenny Omega. Both wrestlers exchange strikes to boos and yays. Omega hits the Fisherman Buster onto Pac for a 2 count. V-trigger by Kenny Omega. But then Pac just absolutely turns Kenny Omega inside out with a huge lariat. Love a lariat. Avalanche Falcon Arrow by Pac to Kenny Omega. Tremendous move. Pac goes for the Black Arrow, but Kenny Omega rolls out of the way. Omega hits the V-trigger knee, which is one of my favourite moves. Just the sound and the way the crowd reacts to it and the way the commentary reacts to it. The V-trigger knee, fantastic. He goes for the One-Winged Angel, but Pac counters. Omega goes for a roll-up. Pac counters into a roll-up of his own. Omega reverses the leverage, though, into another roll-up for the victory. I thought this was a great match. I think initially when Kenny Omega was in AEW, I think he left a little bit to be desired. Maybe the expectation on him was just so high coming out of New Japan. Obviously, he was the IWGP World Champion. His matches were getting 6, however many stars, 7, a million stars from Dave Meltzer every time he, touched the turnbuckle. So the expectation was so high, and I just don't think you could ever match that. I think sometimes that's part of the problem with American wrestlers that go over to Japan and then come back over to the States. There's just such this lore about them over there that, these are amazing, they're amazing. They just can never live up to that hype because it's impossible to when they come back over. But I thought Omega left a little bit to be desired when he first started in AEW. I thought his matches, his promos, etc. were just a little bit, they're just a bit off. But recently, ever since the move to TNT, I would say about 9 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, the last couple of months, Omega just every single week seems to get bigger, better. The crowd responses get louder. The matches get better, even more epic. And I really enjoyed the finish to this one. This wasn't your typical roll up and done. I mean, how many times have we seen competitive match? Oh, they go for the roll up. Oh, they just got him. It was a roll up that got it in the end. This was like rolled up. No, he reversed it, and then he reversed it, got leverage, and won it again. So it was something different. The crowd didn't see that one coming, but they still popped for the finish. This wasn't the AEW problem of false finish, and the crowd's like, oh, I thought the finish was going to be like 5 minutes ago. Wasn't ready for that one. This was something different, but the crowd still popped. They put over how Kenny Omega was the second person to ever pin Pac in AEW. And I don't really think Pac loses anything here. Obviously, like I said, he's not going to be the number 1 ranked wrestler anymore. But let's be honest, he wasn't going to face Chris Jericho next. You're not going to have 2 heels facing off for the AEW World Championship. So I don't think Pac really loses anything here. He was only barely beaten by a huge talent. They'll have future matches for sure. But I think Kenny Omega needed to win this one more than Pac, so this was the right move all round. But I thought it was a tremendous match. Next up, we have the match for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. It's MJF versus Hangman Adam Page. The announcers before the match announced that this would be like an annual thing, so I suppose every November/Thanksgiving time we can see this Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal and then the Dynamite Diamond match the following week. Like I said, when it was first announced, it didn't really mean anything, the concept, because it just came out of nowhere. This time next year, obviously once you've had it once, and then as we go forward, it's obviously going to mean a lot more, because it'll be becoming a lot more prestigious. The only thing of prestige at the moment is the fact that it's a really expensive ring. It's like didn't the price change 10 times as when they were talking about it? Either way, I think it's over $42,000 or something like that. They're stating it's more expensive than your average Super Bowl ring. Crowd chants cowboy shit, of course, for Hangman Adam Page. MJF comes out, flanked, of course, with Wardlow, which I don't know. That name, million names, I know. This name, it sounds like a hemorrhoid cream to me. Wardlow. You got Ward. You got Ward's low. You need to get that checked out, mate. Nothing wrong with hemorrhoid creams, of course. I just, if I was a wrestler, I wouldn't want my name to sound like it. Shared one. I'm sure there's lots of great hemorrhoid creams. If you want to sponsor the show, get in touch. Hangman Page goes for a dive, but Wardlow, yes. Every time I say it now, that's all I'm going to think of. He goes for the dive, but Wardlow standing in his way, stopping Page in his tracks. This doesn't matter, though. Hangman clotheslines MJF into the front row. Adam Page hits a moonsault from the top rope to the outside onto MJF. Page then sets up the buckshot lariat, but MJF grabs the referee. Top heel. The heel antics wouldn't stop, though. MJF then hits a thumb to the eye, but Hangman hits his discus clothesline for a 2 count. We get to see it in the end. Hangman hits the buckshot lariat. Love a lariat. Wardlow puts MJF's foot on the bottom rope, though, to break up the pinfall. The ref is then distracted by MJF, and Wardlow hits a right hand to Hangman. MJF then hits Hangman with the Crossroads. Yes, Cody Rhodes finished the Crossroad. But Jim Ross was absolutely excellent on commentary at this point. Now, people can say that Jim Ross's commentary hasn't been amazing for AEW, or he's not what he was, blah, blah, blah. But here, he was spot on. He was excellent. As soon as he hit the Crossroads, Jim Ross said, "Kiss my ass." He said it wasn't a crossroads, it was a damn double cross. So I'm assuming that's what they're calling MJF's version of the Crossroads, calling it the Double Cross, and that's just brilliant, isn't it? I mean, it's still got the cross element to it. MJF is the Judas. He turned on his best friend, Cody Rhodes. Now he's using his finish to rub it in his face, but it's called the Double Cross. I thought that was excellent. That line is just, yeah, I love that. Out to present the ring, as advertised, Diamond Dallas Page. Dude looks absolutely amazing. He's 63 years old. DDP yoga apparently makes you immortal, because... honestly, 63 years old. He looks in better shape than, most of the roster. Absolutely crazy. And he's still giant. I mean, you forget how tall Dallas was. And initially, he was a manager. And he was told, stand with your legs apart because he was so tall. The people he was managing in WCW and AWA back in the day. So he still looks amazing. Loud chants of DDP from the crowd for Dallas Page. DDP then presents the ring to MJF. Loud chants of asshole for Maxwell here. DDP says some of MJF's actions have been very disappointing to him recently. But he says, tonight, you're the man. I'm sure Becky Lynch would disagree. But DDP says since he's the bigger man, he will congratulate him like the bigger man and offers a handshake to MJF. MJF, though, the consummate heel that he is, spits out his gum and just puts it in the hand of DDP. DDP gets in his face, but Wardlow, that name, stands up to DDP. DDP says, you need to step off. Because when you have a 63-year-old man kicking your ass all over the streets of Chicago, it's going to be pretty damn embarrassing. I mean, for Wardlow maybe, but I mean, I'm sure DDP could kick my ass, and I wouldn't be embarrassed at all. I would be kind of expecting it. So don't piss off DDP. Diamond Cutter, still the most deadly finish in professional wrestling today, brother. So we have a pull-apart brawl between all three. Sort of. Minor scuffle, no bumps. Which is, of course, broken up by the AEW officials, referees, Atlas Security, which all separate the three men. I suppose the attack on Cody, which I did shit on earlier, explains in kayfabe the reason why Cody wouldn't be out there to attack MJF or help DDP or whatever. But in terms of the match, MJF, it was nothing, completely to write home about. MJF needed the win here, of course, to keep his heat going. Now that we get to see the heel MJF character on a weekly basis, I just think he's going to thrive. I mean, he's the perfect heel. You want to punch him in the face all the time. But it's good heat. This isn't Baron Corbin, King Corbin. This is stupid heat. This is heat of, I want to see him get his ass kicked, and I'm going to pay to see him get his ass kicked. That's the type of heat. This isn't, WWE, oh, it's such good shit heat. This is MJF heat. Maybe we'll call this MJF heat and the other type of heat King Corbin heat. We then have Jen Decker interviewing Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes says Jake Hager broke his arm and now he's out for blood, which brings out the Inner Circle. Dustin attempts to fight them off. Beautiful power slam to Sammy Guevara. Out comes the Young Bucks, though, to make the save. There's super kicks to Proud and Powerful and Sammy Guevara here. And then all three hit a stereo Shattered Dreams with stiff kicks to the testicles of the Inner Circle. I'm assuming then out of this we're going to see some six-man tag maybe going forward. Maybe we're going to have Dustin and the Young Bucks versus Guevara and Proud and Powerful. I think they might even actually announce that on this show. So we might actually be seeing that next week. We then get one of my favourite bits of tonight's show. Of course, with all the Jericho stuff, but this is one of my favourite bits because I truly wasn't expected to be blown away by this, but I really was. We see a vignette for the Dark Order. Yes, the Dark Order, who I criticised to the end of the world, have started to turn me. They really have. We then see in the vignette them. So let me set this from the start. So last week we had this guy sort of being bullied in a subway station. He then gets on a subway cart and then sees this promotional video, a bit like almost these religious or self-help videos about finding your best self, Join the Dark Order. We can turn your life around. We can turn you into a winner. Join us. So this week we see the same guy. He goes up to the Join the Dark Order promotional flyer. There's a little one of those sort of tickets at the bottom that you rip and you go to like a meeting or anything like that. So he goes to this meeting, he goes to one of these centres, a bit like these community centres, and there's a room, there's seats, there's people sitting in there, And we see what we later find out to be Evil Uno. He's unmasked. You don't see his full face, but it's Evil Uno lecturing about making people better. He says they could be a teacher, they could be a politician, they could be people who look after your children. Get that sort of creepy vibe. He says, we are one. And the lights briefly, ever so briefly, flicker. And then they come back on, and then everyone in the room has the creeper masks on. And they turn around, and they look at the guy who's just joined the meeting. And you know what? I actually really, really like this. Evil Uno explained that Stu Grayson was Evil Uno's first student, and he learned all of Evil Uno's first teachings. So that explains the backstory of why they're a tag team. It also explains why you have all these creepers, because these are his underlings. These are his cult. And Stu Grayson is like his chief lieutenant, his right-hand man. So it explains why Stu Grayson will do everything for Evil Uno. Again, they play it like this is a cult, and they actually go really deep with it. Last week you had the clean-cut, self-help promos about bettering yourself, and they could turn your life around. And then this week, they have it gets a little bit more seedy. It's still slightly clean-cut, but a little bit more seedy. Goes into the dimly dark, grubby room. It's not completely full up. You have Evil Uno spitting his doctrine about how he can better them. And it does legitimize the creepers as why he has this big group of weirdos in masks around him. That was the thing that was a bit corny about it before, wasn't it? It's, why have you got these people around you? What are they doing? Why would they be, not trying to be harsh at Evil Uno, but why would they be serving this giant fat guy? Well, it's because in a cult, they idolize him. Some people might criticize it as a bit hokey, but let's be honest, if Bray Wyatt did it, people would be saying how great it was. I thought it was really well done. I think it's the best thing by far the Dark Order have done. I'm more interested in them now than I have ever been at any point of their AEW tenure, which says a lot because I was not a Dark Order fan. They didn't mean anything, so now they do. That's storytelling, folks. You can't beat it. Next, we have your main event. AEW World Championship, AEW World Champion Chris Jericho versus Scorpio Sky, one half of the World Tag Team Champions, part of SCU. They've announced before the match that seconds are banned from ringside. So no SCU, no inner circle at ringside, just one-on-one. We're led to believe. Wait for that in a minute. We see Scorpio Sky hit a single drop kick to Chris Jericho on the outside. The commentators discuss how Chris Jericho might be distracted for this match with his celebration earlier this evening, his lavish lifestyle that he's currently living as AEW World Champion. Chris Jericho hits his trademark springboard dropkick, knocking Scorpio Sky off the apron. Scorpio Sky hits a series of kicks, followed by a drop kick to Jericho. We get a float over ace crusher by Scorpio Sky to Chris Jericho for a 2 count. Jericho locks in the walls of Jericho. They're calling it the Lion Tamer here, which of course he called it in ECW, and I think he called it that in WCW as well. But I'm assuming WWE owns the rights to calling it the Walls of Jericho, so the Lion Tamer is fine. So if anything, it's a nice throwback. Jericho gets in the face of Aubrey Edwards, which does in every match, every championship match he has had, which Aubrey Edwards has officiated, by the way. Chris Jericho has said in the media and on his podcast several times about how great an official he thinks she is and how she's perfect for his matches. But every match he gets in her face, I think Aubrey would be sick of him by this point. But out runs Jake Hager, who of course was banned from ringside. Frankie Kazarian and Daniels come out to take out Jake Hager. Whilst the referee is distracted by all of this, Jericho attempts to use the AEW World Championship bout on Scorpio Sky, but Sky counters into a TKO for a close 2 count. A close 2 count. As believable near fall as you could probably get in this match. Loud chants of Scorpio by the crowd. Scorpio hits the top rope Frankensteiner from a standing jump. Yeah, that's serious athleticism there for another 2 count. Scorpio goes for another move, but Jericho counters into a code breaker for a 2 count. Jericho goes for the Judas effect, misses. Scorpio counters into a backslide for another close 2 count. Jericho, though, ultimately locks in the Lion Tamer and submits Scorpio Sky. I thought that was a tremendous ending sequence, close to near falls. As close to near falls as believably you're going to get in that match. Post-match, Jericho locks in the Lion Tamer, but Jon Moxley's music hits. Moxley comes out through the crowd. Both stare down each other to end the show. So the match, tremendous match. I thought the near falls were actually really good and believable. Let's be honest. We all knew Chris Jericho's winning this one. There's no way they're going to have Chris Jericho drop the title to Scorpio Sky. It's just not happening. But they planted that seed of doubt in your mind that this was actually possible, that Scorpio Sky could come out of this one with a championship, which says a lot about the quality of the match and the storytelling here. Was the Jake Hader SCU spot needed? No, I don't think so. I didn't like that part of it. If you have a stipulation that two are banned from ringside and then they all come out anyway, it really negates any future stipulations that you pose on matches. Now, did it lead to a great spot and a nice false finish? Yes, of course, when Hager came out and getting involved. We're conditioned to, when there's been a stipulation about no one can interfere, that when someone does interfere and the ref gets distracted, as wrestling fans, we think, right, something in our brain, in our wrestling brain triggers, and we go, okay, finish is coming, angle. So when Scorpio Sky gets the TKO and goes for the pin, you're like, holy shit. I mean, if this is the finish, he might win it. But I don't think they needed to go that way. You're putting over on commentary, and you've been putting over how great of an official Aubrey Edwards is. She's the best referee we've got. She only does our top championship matches, etc., etc. But she lost control of a championship match out there. So the ref kind of loses integrity there for me if she can't handle the stipulation of the match. But maybe I'm going into one spot too much. I thought this was an excellent main event, capping off an excellent episode of Dynamite. I mentioned in last week's review that if anyone was going to take the title off Jericho, if AEW even considered taking the title off of Chris Jericho, then by far it should be Jon Moxley. Moxley is arguably hotter than any other act in AEW right now besides Jericho, of course. I don't think they should take the belt off Chris Jericho by any means, certainly not anytime soon anyway. But if they wanted to go in a different direction, then I think Moxley's your guy. Obviously, Jericho's no spring chicken. He's going to be around for 3 years. Jericho signed a 3-year deal. But if Jericho decides he needs some time off or anything like that, and they want to have the belt on someone else, I think Moxley's your guy. I made this comparison last week. Some people agreed, some people disagreed. For me, Moxley is AEW Steve Austin. He's not a heel. He's not a face. He doesn't come out of either tunnel in his entrance. He just walks through the crowd. He spits complete fire in his promos, which are unscripted, uncensored. And Moxley just seems like a man reborn now, doesn't he? Without the confines of the WWE shackles weighing down his creativity. Now, obviously, people are going to say, well, we've seen this before. We saw this in WWE. We saw Chris Jericho versus Dean Ambrose feud in WWE. But this almost feels like a first time ever now. Just because they're two completely different characters and new characters which they've evolved into. This isn't Chris Jericho list WWE Chris Jericho. This is AEW heel Le Champion Chris Jericho. This is Jon Moxley. This is not Dean Ambrose. Jon Moxley would probably laugh at Dean Ambrose, drop him with a paradigm shift, and then throw him in some thumbtacks. They are thumbtacks to watch. Thumbtacks, and walk through the crowd. So I'm excited for Jericho and Moxley feud. The promos are just going to be fantastic, aren't they? And of course, there is storyline purpose to this. You have to remember it was Jon Moxley that interrupted Chris Jericho's initial thank you request after Jericho defeated Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing, AEW's first ever event, of course. Jon Moxley debuted, came through the crowd, and the first person he dropped wasn't actually Kenny Omega, it was Chris Jericho. Dropped him with a paradigm shift before he started brawling with Kenny Omega. So there's story there for that one. There's definitely a story there. Anyway, let's go to your opinions. AEW Dynamite in 3 words. At the end of every episode of AEW Dynamite, we send out a Twitter post on our official Twitter account at 365Wrestle, asking our followers to describe AEW Dynamite in 3 words. So let's take a look and see what our followers all thought of tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite. At Ripper991 says, not going to watch and waste my time. I hate to break it to you, but that's 7 words, but obviously not a fan of AEW there. At Sun Mofo, not sure what that's short for. This is a family show, of course. Says weak first half. I would tend to disagree on that one. The first half of the show had the whole thank you celebration. Maybe it wasn't to everyone's taste. I enjoyed the first half of the show. I understand after that, you had the Lucha Brothers versus Best Friends match, and like I said, that left a bit to be desired for me. Anyway, I thought that was a bit, they shouldn't really put them over. On Instagram, finally, we have Negan _AEW, who says it in the name. She's obviously a fan, or he's a fan. Amazing, wonderful, awesome. I mean, you can't get better superlatives in that one. But what did you think of the show? Let us know your thoughts on tonight's episode in the comments section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once we get to that magic number of 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to do live reviews of every show and really get you, our great followers, more involved in our reviews. Don't forget, you can follow WrestleNews 365 on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. Twitter, that's at 365Wrestle. Facebook, at WrestleNews 365. Instagram, at WrestleNews 365. Storyfire, at WrestleNews 365. We will be uploading exclusive content to our Storyfire channel every Saturday and Sunday starting this week. So be sure to subscribe over there to not miss any of the action you won't be able to find anywhere else. You can also visit our website, WrestleNews365.com, for all the very latest news, reviews, exclusive series, and much more. You can also support WrestleNews 365 by purchasing our merchandise just in time for the holidays. It's still not too late. I know it's Thanksgiving today, but you get some time for Christmas. You know, maybe get a WrestleNews 365 shirt, WrestleNews 365 hoodie, WrestleNews 365 mug. We've got it all. We've got it all. It's all ready for you. Visit WN365.com. That's WN365.com for all of our merch and apparel. If you do purchase an item, be sure to post it on social media so we can share it with you and all of our followers as well. We really appreciate all your support with all of our merchandise. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you've come across this video today. We really appreciate it. Have a very, very happy Thanksgiving to all of our USA followers out there, and we'll speak with you again very soon.